guys, I think we're live. Are we live?
I think so.
I think we're live.
I think it's changed the...
Everything's changed. Facebook has changed. Live.
Oh my God, they're always updating stuff, aren't they? It says live in the top left corner there, so it must be live.
So we are live. It throws us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight we're going to be talking about female hormones. So I've got my lovely assistant with me to help demonstrate a little bit about female hormones. Ladies, I thought we would kick off. This is a Q&A session, so basically I want to answer your questions, anything to do with hormones. Generally we might be talking about kind of reproductive hormones, but also thyroid, maybe even insulin, so kind of blood sugar hormones as well. But I thought I'd kick off by just giving you a very quick introduction to how your hormones work and why us ladies are just a little bit more complicated when it comes to hormones. So the guys here, you know, it's basically about the brain here talking to the balls and back again, and it's pretty simple. Whereas us ladies, we have this kind of relay of about 4 different hormones over our 28-day cycle that have to kind of tag team. And we can really upset that with our modern day lifestyle. So anything from stress, travel, you know, kind of a serious trauma, maybe even dietary changes, blood sugar changes, thyroid problems will all upset our natural 28-day cycle. So first of all, I'm going to walk you through that cycle. If you're joining us on the live a little bit later, obviously get going typing in your questions in the comments box, but you can re-watch the beginning if you need to, where we kind of recap all of this. Matt's also going to be checking out for the questions, so we'll be getting the questions coming in towards the end of the session. But first of all, let's just talk about hormones, because there's something that I think every woman needs to know, and that's kind of just a basic understanding of how your cycle works. And also I'm just going to touch upon contraception and how that works, because it's helpful to understand how the hormones change and why we might need to do a kind of reset once we stop taking contraception and if you have a fertility goal. And I'm also just going to give a quick explanation of menopause, when everything changes because the ovaries close down and they're not producing hormones anymore. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk through the 4 hormones that basically kind of interchange across the 28-day cycle. So Matt, are you ready?
Yes.
So Matt here is on day 1 of his cycle, so he's just having his menstrual bleed, and he's tucking into a curly whirly because that's what we do on day 1 of our menstrual cycle. He's actually going to eat that curly whirly probably.
Save that for later.
So the first bit of your cycle, the key is the hormones in the body are really low, and this is where the pill changes everything, or any kind of hormone contraception, because we don't get this kind of low levels of hormone. But what this does, the brain here detects low levels of hormone, and it knows, okay, we've finished one cycle, we're ready to start a new cycle, and it releases something called follicle stimulating hormone from the brain. So the important thing to know, ladies, is that it's not going to stay on because it's got a sweaty head.
Sweaty.
Put it on your eyebrows.
You did.
Is that your brain and your ovaries are always talking together. So if we have any elements of stress or any inflammation that crosses into the brain and causes suppression of what we call the pituitary gland in the brain, we don't get this release of follicle stimulating hormone, which kickstarts the whole cycle. So this can be one problem that we might have. But in a healthy woman, low levels of hormones, the brain releases follicle stimulating hormone. Now, follicle stimulating hormone is the personal trainer to the follicles that sit in your ovaries. So now we're back down here in the ovaries, and we've basically got a number of follicles, about 10, 20 each month, that are ready to mature. So they're ready to go into their PT sessions, and they're going to grow big and strong and get ready to go out into the fallopian tube. So FSH is your PT to the follicles. What it does is it makes the follicles grow, and they grow by taking in cholesterol from the bloodstream, converting it into testosterone and then to estrogen. So Matt now has got some follicles down here, and they're growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And as they grow bigger, we're going to get more and more estrogen being produced in the body. So that's your first half of your menstrual cycle. So Matt, his ovaries are down here. We don't need progesterone.
My ovaries are quite high.
Yeah. so his ovaries are now releasing estrogen in response to that follicle stimulating hormone, and as each of those follicles grows bigger, the estrogen load in the body gets bigger, so we get this surge in the first half of the cycle of estrogen. Then what happens is the brain goes, okay, I've got loads of estrogen here, I don't think we need this personal trainer anymore, the follicles are big and strong, they can cope on their own. So actually follicle stimulating hormone drops off. Okay, but estrogen continues to surge, so we're now kind of in this estrogen dominant phase. It's going to peak at around day 14. that's when it's just fallen into his crotch. That's when estrogen levels are going to be at their highest. So the next thing that happens is basically those follicles that were growing strong. Imagine they've all gone to a boot camp and the instructor, the FSH, hasn't turned up. So some of them think, well, do you know what, I'll go home. The one person that stays is basically the fittest follicle, and it's basically evolution here. Survival of the fittest follicle, the one that can survive without the personal trainer, still goes to boot camp and does the workout anyway. That's the best analogy I can come up with, ladies.
Was that a good analogy?
I don't know.
I don't know.
So one follicle survives, and this is the follicle that's going to get released, basically. It grows really big and strong. We've got loads of estrogen peaks, and the brain picks this up. Now we need LH, Matt. Have you got LH?
Yeah.
So the next thing is, with this big estrogen peak where this egg is going, sorry, this follicle is saying, let me out, let me out. We then get the brain releasing. The brain says, okay, we've got an egg ready. I'm going to release luteinizing hormone. And this is the one that I always remembered it as lets the egg go. So we've got the brain involved again and tells the ovary to basically release that follicle into the fallopian tube. Okay? So we've had high FSH, then we had high estrogen, and then we had this luteinizing hormone surge in the middle. So you see, we're really quite complicated. Those three things have to happen to get you to ovulate in the first place. Now the great thing is, I'm gonna now get a plum. This is possibly the most random demonstration of hormones ever. Okay, because the next thing that happens, ladies, is you've got a plum. So the reason I've got a plum is because that is kind of like the follicle. So if you think about it, the skin is like the first bit hoovering up the cholesterol, converts it into testosterone, and then the flesh of the plum is kind of where we convert it into estrogen. So we've got loads of estrogen being released. But the stone is basically what we call the oocyte, and this is actually what gets released into the fallopian tube, and it leaves behind the rest of the follicle. So this is staying somewhere down here. And the reason I'm showing you that is because the bit that gets left behind is called the corpus luteum, that hangs out in the ovary, and it starts to release progesterone. So next up, Matt, we've got progesterone. So here's progesterone, you can't see that, but now we've got progesterone. Now estrogen is going to drop away a little bit, we don't need as much of it now. So this is our progesterone dominant phase, the second half of the cycle. And the reason that these two hormones tag team is estrogen is basically designed to kind of thicken the lining of your womb, and then progesterone comes in and basically vascularizes it and makes it full of nutrients ready for the fetus should it attach and you fall pregnant. So that's what's happening. I'm just looking at Matt with a post-it on his head.
That's such a level. Things now, I do for you. I know. I should be watching Netflix right now.
Now if pregnancy does not occur, so if the oocyte, which is now going down the fallopian tube, doesn't meet the sperm of her dreams and basically passes through, then obviously the lining of the womb drops away, and all of these hormones then go low again. So that's the point. So all the hormones drop away, which is why you then might feel kind of like mood dive a little bit, feel a bit exhausted. Some big changes. This is just before the menstrual cycle, so just before the bleed, the hormones drop away. And the reason for that is the whole cycle is going to then start again. The brain is going to go, okay, hormones are low, it's going to release follicle stimulating hormone, everything starts again. And this is over kind of 28, maybe slightly longer, maybe slightly shorter, 28 days basically, for all of these different things to occur. And just one change, as I mentioned, so kind of jet lag, travel, trauma, or anything like a really serious workout, sleep deprivation can really disrupt that cycle. So a big takeaway for you ladies is when you get your hormones tested, you do need to know the day that you're testing your hormones on, and you do need to ideally get maybe several tests. You can do kind of saliva cycles across the month, or urine tests where you're looking at hormones across the month to actually establish, is it a problem with the pituitary output in the brain, or is it something to do with the ovaries where the conversions might not be working too well? I had drawn this up, but you know what, I'm going to do a video, it's going to be easier, but this is what it looks like. Basically, all those different surges of different hormones. And then basically as we get older, and obviously the number of eggs that we have declines, and if we go into menopause, and obviously we're not kind of producing eggs anymore, so we're not getting that estrogen and progesterone being produced from the ovaries, our adrenal glands, which sit on the kidneys and are responsible for the production of stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, that kind of stuff, they take over that role. So you've got a smaller supply of hormones, so you have to nurture them and look after them a little bit more, and everything changes a little bit. So again, we can't get away with as much as we get older in terms of energy output. And the final thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to go to the Q&A, is that all of those changes, so if I just refer you to this really quickly.
Yeah, I think that will come up back to front on there.
Oh, will it? Okay, but you can still see, everybody, that there's this massive surge in the middle of activity, and basically...
You can actually do something on the settings, but
We haven't done it.
We'll do that next time.
We'll do another thing. That big surge in the middle, so from day 14 where we've got the big surge of estrogen, the luteinizing hormone comes in, and then we've got progesterone climbing, it takes energy. So a lot of my clients that I work with and a lot of members in 365, I talk to them about supporting your energy needs across mid-cycle, end of cycle. So that's your energy, nutrients, vitamins and minerals basically. So as well as macronutrients, which are important, I talk about things like B vitamins, especially B6 and B3, magnesium and zinc, and maybe using some essential fatty acids, because the cells are kind of churning through this process of producing energy. Your tiny little mitochondria, which are involved in this process, they're doing a lot of those hormone conversions, so they're working overtime, which is why we feel exhausted. So it's fine to not basically head out to an intense workout or go to the gym or work really long hours. If you're tired, it's because your body's doing a lot of work and you need to rest a little bit. So actually it's really important that you do listen to your body, maybe take some supplements around your cycle to support your needs, but also look at your lifestyle. Sleep more, stress less, rest a bit more, around these big surges of kind of hormone changes. So, Matt, have we got any questions?
There is a question.
You can have a curly wording now.
But my phone keeps spazzing out.
So, post any questions that you have about anything to do with, it can be fertility, it can be cycle issues, it can be something like polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis. All of these are generally when those cycles aren't able to, those tag teams aren't able to happen properly. And then we might get too high a level of testosterone, for example. That's in the case of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So we have to go and look at the kind of drivers behind that.
Okay, so
question.
This question here is from Annette. So Annette has said, I'd love to know what you think about spots along the chin and jawline and whether that's to do with hormones and anything I can do to help it. Thanks.
So generally, yes, it is, and that is quite a typical hormonal area. Sometimes it can be related to high testosterone, so more high androgens as well. If you've got other symptoms of high androgens, which can be anything from, hair growth and maybe hair loss as well, kind of male balding patterns. Most of us have a little bit of an element of this, by the way. I often say to most women, you grow the odd hair in your chest, don't you? And chin, well, I certainly do anyway. But yeah, the spots around here can be a sign of that. So it really helps to do a couple of things. The main areas I look to when it comes to hormones is first of all, blood sugar regulation. So you have to look at things like alcohol and refined carbohydrates, caffeine, things that can actually kind of just disrupt your blood sugar levels. Even, really intense training, too much exercise can have a really similar effect. And stress. We start to elevate androgens in the body. Those are our stress hormones, and we elevate blood sugars. And that can be one of the causes of that kind of hormonal acne. So do keep an eye on that and look at doing whole food diet, good sources of carbs, sleep, managing stress, all those kind of usual things. Maybe trial elimination of alcohol, caffeine, see if it makes a difference. Next up would be the gut, and I'd also kind of pair the gut with detoxification, because hormones are detoxified via the bowel and via the liver, so we have to support them. So it helps to do things like maybe a probiotic. You might want to explore an elimination diet. Sometimes it's dairy that can be a trigger with the kind of skin thing. You also might want to do things like some live fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut, even some things like bone broth and organ meats if you're kind of up for that. So a real kind of paleo diet can be wonderful in terms of just helping with detoxification and gut health. So consider that, as well as the kind of changes we mentioned earlier about ditching refined foods as well. Other things that would help would be fibre, so flaxseed, chia seeds, some root vegetables, just generally increasing your vegetable intake. Some fruits, things like berries, apples and pears are really good again for binding onto hormones and helping to excrete them out the body. So if you do go on an elimination diet, do make sure you keep fibre high. Last couple of things would be also just supporting the liver with things like cruciferous vegetables. That's your broccoli, cauliflower, kimchi, sauerkraut again, Brussels sprouts, basically all the windy vegetables are really helpful for liver health. And then you've got antioxidants like green tea as well. But just also general things like B vitamins are amazing for liver. So just taking things like extra eggs in your nutrition might help with that. So there's just a few things. If it persists, you might need to do a little bit of weeding with regards to your gut health as well, where you take some oregano or some berberine. Ideally do this under the guidance of somebody like a nutritional therapist, because again, it's not something that you want to try and do yourself. You have to really support other systems in the body if you're going to do an intervention like that.
Good answer.
Long answer, sorry.
It's a question from Katie. I often don't have periods for over 12 months, and when I do, they are drastically irregular. Is there a way for me to tell where I am in my cycle? Should I be worried? And then she's commented again to say that she looks though she has been diagnosed as having PCOS.
Okay, so I was going to say the first thing that you want to kind of explore is the cause of that. So with amenorrhea, it can be related to things like the contraceptive pill, it can be related to exercise, low calorie diets, and some thyroid function issues as well. So low thyroid function possibly are a few things just to explore and get tested on. As you've mentioned, you think it might be PCOS. PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, again has kind of different causes and different drivers that you have to look at. So in some women it's because they may have kind of insulin resistance, maybe slightly overweight. So the goal there is to get kind of blood sugar levels regulated, improve insulin health, lose some body fat, and again just a really good nutritious diet, some good weight training as well, which I really recommend. Not kind of too crazy with high intensity and kind of cardio stuff, mainly kind of weight training we want to improve insulin sensitivity. They'd be really beneficial. And also things like essential fatty acids would be helpful. Other types of PCOS might be again thyroid driven, or again kind of high stress hormones and underweight. So it really depends on kind of what case you think that you might be in terms of next steps. So again, if it's thyroid, we want to look at could we support the thyroid hormones a little bit more with some thyroid nutrients. Some supplements might be helpful, selenium, iodine, if it's a conversion issue. Generally, for a lot of women, just kind of think about what you've been doing to get here in terms of hormone dysregulation and do the opposite. So in some women it's a case of maybe a little bit too much kind of sugar, alcohol, not enough exercise, so you have to switch and do the opposite. But for some women it's almost under eating, too much exercise, too much pressure, too much stress, and therefore you've got to do the opposite and actually kind of whack some calories down, you gain a little bit of weight, relax about your physique, and often the hormones will regulate. And if sleep deprivation is consistent amongst any of those issues, that's one of the big things that I address with hormones. So if you can sleep for longer, improve the quality of your sleep with magnesium, eye mask, earplugs, take B6 before bed, that can be really helpful as well. Definitely focus on that. So there's just a few things. But generally with your GP, ask to get a comprehensive set of blood tests. The urine tests that are looking at cycling, it will be a bit difficult, but even just getting a snapshot will give you some idea, because with PCOS, LH and FSH are often not in their reference ranges, and the testosterone and androgens might be a little bit higher. Just one example, there are several different types. So even a snapshot is going to be a little bit more helpful for you. And obviously maybe an ultrasound scan to see if the cyst exists on the ovaries.
Okie dokes. Next question from Amy. No, sorry, I've missed one out. Helen. You mentioned urine and saliva tests to check hormones at various points in the cycle.
Yeah.
Do you know if you can buy these and test at home, or would you need to get these tests done with your GP? Many thanks.
I'm giggling because the saliva ones, I think it's over 28 days, so you'd be in there for 28 days. Your GP would love you for that, wouldn't they? No, so the saliva one would be offered by someone like Genova Diagnostics. And they are basically taken, not every day over the 28 days, but you take, I think it's 15, 16 saliva samples, but it's split over 28 days, so you get an idea. It isn't exactly, there's a bit of debate about, are you measuring the free hormones, the bound hormones, which is the most accurate, and a new test that's come in lately is the dried urine test. So it's called the Dutch hormone test by Precision Analytical. Again, both of these you can just order yourself and do them at home. And this one you actually pee on a stick, and then basically it's several times across the day. And there's a test for menopause, there's a test for cycling women. So make sure you get the right one. And you can also look at stress hormones. And there's some actual kind of indicators of thyroid function in there, but it would still maybe be helpful to get thyroid hormones tested by your GP. But just as an aside, your GP is probably only ever going to test two thyroid hormones, thyroid stimulating hormone known as TSH, and usually kind of total T4, maybe free T4. And really you need to also look at free T3, because that's what goes into the cell and exerts the effect that we want from thyroid hormones. If we don't know that one, then we don't really know what the kind of true situation is. And there's also something called reverse thyroid hormone, which is the brakes on thyroid function, so you'd also want to probably know that one. Also thyroid binding globulin, which is the protein that binds to thyroid hormones, and just in case that's very high. And lastly, antibodies towards the thyroid gland. So most of the cases that come to me at the moment with hyperthyroidism, I'm often saying to them, has your doctor tested whether this is autoimmune? So your immune system has launched an attack on the thyroid hormone. Sorry, my storage is nearly full. I'm just going to press that. So you need to kind of know if your antibodies are elevated, and if they are, this is an autoimmune condition known as Hashimoto's. That's causing the problem, so we need to treat that again with, you can do loads with a paleo intervention and also some targeted supplements and some changes to your lifestyle, and often look at environmental factors that might be contributing to that as well. I'm really worried this might cut out now, ladies. If it does, I will do some more videos to answer any more questions, but it's saying that my storage is full on my phone.
Okay,
what does that mean?
Let's continue
then.
Right. Amy, the pill is the only thing that has helped me so far. I tried 2 years prior via elimination diet and seed cycling, kefir, headspace meditation, etc. to try and balance hormones. I suffered bad acne, bloating, pain and lots more. I gave in finally and tried the pill. Every symptom cleared up within a month. I swore I'd never go on it and I don't want to be on it long term. What else can I try?
It's a really good point. So I had a very similar situation in my teens, really bad acne, and Dianette absolutely saved my skin, and you couldn't get me off it for love nor money, despite doctors saying you can't stay on this for a long period of time. The reason being, if I look back now, I've done some gene testing as well just to look at my hormones, and I don't detoxify hormones very well, so I have to support myself a little bit more. So you can, again, once you've got a kind of snapshot of what's going on, this might be slightly genetic, it might be also being compounded by lifestyle issues as well. If you're supporting your gut function and your liver, they're the two main areas, you will be able to make a difference. So for me personally, since stopping any hormone medications, I've really focused on doing what's called a 5R protocol in the gut, very similar to doing some antibiotics, but you do natural antimicrobials, but then also go back in with some support for fat digestion and breaking down food, and also the gut barrier, kind of restoring all of that, changing my nutrition, so kind of going like maybe gluten and dairy free might be a starting point for most people, and then supporting my liver with some phase 2 nutrients, so that's some proteins and some B vitamins as well, kind of that's not for phase 2, but anyway, so B vitamins. So there is so much more that you can do beyond the kind of points that you just mentioned. By law, I'm not allowed to mention that anyone should take or not take the contraceptive pill. It can be hugely beneficial in certain cases, and most hormone interventions, can bring, relief of symptoms. It's just helpful to kind of consider what are the long-term risks, what are the side effects, is there anything that you could be doing in the background. Never just stop it, always speak to your GP about your desire to maybe step off it, and in the process before you stop taking any medications, try and rebuild everything in the background, so support the detoxification systems. So some of the things I've already mentioned, with if it's an estrogen thing, it might be worthwhile looking at something like DIM in terms of helping to make sure that the estrogen is being basically metabolized in a healthy way, and then also lots of things like probiotics, and I've already mentioned fiber and prebiotics, to make sure that we're detoxing the hormones and they're not being recycled. If you have an infection in your gut, and this is definitely what I had, I did stool tests and all sorts of things. If you have infections, they produce more toxins. There's a bacteria kind of just leaving a trail of poop, essentially. That passes into the body and causes an increased load on your liver. But another thing that they do is increase an enzyme in the bowel that basically kind of chops up the estrogen, which is kind of bound up in a bin bag ready to be taken out of the body. And this enzyme comes along and slices through the bin bag, and the estrogen gets recycled back in. But also things like testosterone as well could be too high. So if we're getting not a great kind of detoxification of the hormones, that build-up is what's causing your symptoms. So if you focus more on the gut and the liver, you might actually find symptom relief with that. But again, it'd be probably worthwhile working with someone, because you can get really stressed reading blogs and trying to do this yourself. So go under some guidance for that.
I think it's always quite hard in those situations as well, because as you mentioned, like in the space of a month, the pill kind of cleared everything up. But often to try and fix those kind of things, you know, coming off the pill and doing it that way takes a lot longer than a month, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think actually, so just to go back to your point, one of the things that might have helped will either be an excess of an androgen, so, you know, adding some estrogen in has helped balance that. But again, you know, you could do phytoestrogens, like a natural alternative, but also kind of working on testosterone and making sure that you could, you know, try and balance that. Some women are just predisposed to high levels of testosterone, you can see that, and again, I'm sure increasingly we're going to see that there's kind of genetic predispositions to some of these issues that we see with things like PCOS as well.
So Amy, so Colette has said, what food do I need to avoid if you have underactive thyroid?
So underactive thyroid, the two big ones that I would eliminate first and foremost, it really depends. Again, you need to know if your underactive thyroid is related to hormone conversions and production, in which case it's more about improving your nutrient status. But if it's autoimmune, it's Hashimoto's, and you've got your immune system attacking the thyroid, I'd straight away remove gluten and dairy. I'd probably go grain-free as well. And also, I often recommend kind of alcohol-free, maybe even coffee-free, but kind of like an 8 to 12 week healing period.
Sounds grim.
8 to 12 weeks.
Not,
yeah, but
not forever.
No, not necessarily forever, but you probably feel grim if you have underactive thyroid. Everything's sluggish, everything's slow, you know, the bowel doesn't work properly, you've got no energy, your hair and nails aren't growing. So, you know, you do this in those situations. So give yourself a kind of 12-week healing period, but you need to know where you're starting with this. If it's not an issue with autoimmunity, then we need to look at, is it an issue with the raw ingredients? So that would be things like iodine and tyrosine and selenium, vitamin A, vitamin D, all needed. We have like this, again, very similar to the female reproductive hormones. We have the same thing with thyroid. We have brain kind of detecting what it needs to do, speaking to the thyroid gland, and then loads and loads of conversions happening and going around the body and acting on every single cell in the body. So we need to make sure we've got those raw ingredients in there. So if you're not eating fish and seafood and seaweeds, then you need to maybe look at a good multi with some iodine in it. But again, you want to kind of know where you're starting from with all of that. Vitamin A, I don't know if I mentioned that one, is really important for the thyroid to actually kind of get into the cell and act on the nucleus of the cell. So we want to make sure if you don't eat animal products that you've got kind of beta-carotene rich foods in your nutrition. That some of us genetically aren't great at converting beta-carotene to vitamin A. So it may be that even though you want to be a vegetarian, you've got to kind of explore whether that's working for you. If you've got signs of vitamin A deficiency, maybe that's not the case. So the two foods I would look at avoiding, or those would be, look at eliminating those, but look at increasing the others. And then the other things to consider with thyroid is stress is a big factor. So high levels of stress hormones, you know, are going to have an impact. This could be kind of from emotional side of trauma, or too much exercise, or just, you know, it can also be stresses in your environment. So pollution, environmental toxins. If you work in a city, possibly that might be affecting you. And fluoride in the water is also suggested to have an effect in some people in terms of blocking thyroid hormone activity. So maybe just consider all of those. Just kind of start off at 10. We have in our book Second Helping, we have a section on autoimmunity that guides you through kind of eliminations and what to do. And then we've got some helpful stuff on gut and hormones as well. So that might be something that you have a quick read of.
Nicola has said, I had a baby 7 weeks ago. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And really want to get back to my fitness and losing my baby weight. What can help? Any advice?
So first and foremost, don't put yourself under that pressure. Like 7 weeks is absolutely nothing.
No.
I would just focus. Apparently, we don't know this, but having a puppy was hard enough for us. But so I'm told, the first 6 months is just the hardest. And you know, if you're finding it quite easy at the moment, then amazing. Just kind of ride on that. But for the first 6 months, I would just focus on getting used to being a mum, you know, and just getting into a lovely routine where, let's say lovely, you know, you're probably covered in baby sick and frazzled right now, but when you can, sleep. If you get a chance to exercise, I would just focus on walking, and you're going to be really active, you know, with a baby anyway. So where you probably make the biggest difference, if you have the time, is doing some batch cooking, because nutrition is going to make the biggest difference in terms of you and your baby's health together now. So health comes first at this stage, and remember, there's 2 of you to feed. So actually I would just focus on getting some really nutritious food down you. So things like smoothies and soups, and make up some high-fat snacks so you can get calories very easily, very quickly, without too much fuss. So that is where I would dedicate your time. And then kind of after, I would give it 6 months, just walking and breastfeeding, and the weight is going to come off. If you need something else, there's plenty of time, and at 6 months you might want to start doing some body weight training just at home in the lounge, or maybe use it as an excuse to get to a boot camp and with other mums.
I was going to say, like, even now, like, because if exercise was something that you were doing before and you enjoyed it and you're quite keen to get it back, I would just say, do the kind of minimum that you can. Be realistic about it. You've got a 7-week-old baby that demands a lot of your time. Kind of like quality time to yourself is going to be far and few between. So even just doing like 10-minute workouts. If you actually message us after this, I can send you some. We've got a load of like little 10-minute workouts that we send to clients to do in between, maybe like PT sessions. They're short, they're sweet, but they're effective, and they're only 10-15 minutes long. And it's surprising what you can get done in that space of time when you just put your mind to it, get your head down and get cracking. So
yeah, but like I said, only if you kind of, like Matt said, it's part and parcel of who you are and what you do. I've always loved exercise, so I'd imagine I would get back to it a little bit quicker than most women, but only if I felt ready and have my nutrition sorted first. That's the most important thing, and just sleep. So I'd favour a nap.
If you are breastfeeding at the moment as well, you obviously don't underestimate
the calories burnt. Yeah.
So
it's more than when you're pregnant in terms of your calorie requirements. So up to kind of 500 a day. So I'm packing the nutrient dense foods. Any more questions?
There is indeed. Kirsty, I have the opposite problem to Katie, and I have my periods last for 12 to 14 days with only 9 days off. Wow. I've been like this since having the Marina coil fitted. I've seen a gynecologist and they are out of ideas. Any thoughts re nutrition?
So again, I kind of look at this really holistically and probably look at a number of things. So firstly, get some hormone tests done possibly to see, okay, what is out of sync here. For someone like you, actually, maybe the Dutch hormone test, the dried urine test would be most appropriate, because you'd want to know the balance of all the different hormones. But I would also say, first and foremost, look at getting blood sugar levels regulated and supporting your gut as a starting point. And with the blood sugar, remember, so that is about kind of having 3 really nutritious meals and spacing them out, having some gaps, ditching things like refined carbs and alcohol, caffeine, everything I've mentioned earlier. It's very, very similar. A good nutritious diet, getting plenty of sleep, and managing stress levels. Acupuncture can also be wonderful for any hormone dysfunction or imbalances. So they would be some really good starting points. The tests will be helpful in terms of, okay, what's the situation? I don't know if you're still on the Marina coil or if you're aware that the Marina coil is emitting hormones as well, so it's progesterone. So discuss options, with whichever person, the GP that you're working with or endocrinologist, about alternatives, remember, if something's not working, is there, something else that you can do to reverse this process? So that would be, you want to work alongside them and make sure that they're guiding you through all of that as well. Then in terms of other stuff that you might want to consider, again, probably some digestive support, and probably maybe some basic stuff like essential fatty acids, some B vitamins. Just try and see, I don't know anything about your kind of health history and what your current nutrition and exercise lifestyle is about, but that's all going to figure. So usually I'll kind of make next suggestions based on those things, but there's loads that you can do, so don't kind of lose faith and think that you have to put up with this at this point in time. If it is that kind of there's a progesterone excess, and all of these can be rebalanced with everything that I've mentioned, and herbs and kind of looking at adrenal function, the stress hormones, is also really, really powerful as well. So in some women it can be that they take these kinds of progesterone therapies. One thing I didn't mention earlier is if we're stressed, we have something called the progesterone steal, which is where the body takes, the hormones are all kind of working in a hierarchy, and it decides the stress pathway is most important, and it kind of steals cholesterol for that, and it's usually progesterone that suffers. So is it that you're converting some of your hormones, and into stress hormones? Is that something else that's going on? I'm literally just kind of putting things out there, but really I'd kind of say test, tidy up nutrition, sleep, stress management, and look at some gut support as well, and see if that makes a difference.
Helen has said, what tests would be needed to know this about thyroid? So probably going back to when you was talking about.
Yeah, so your GP will only do the TSH and usually the T4. So you can go to someone like Genova Diagnostics. I also use Biolabs or Doctor's Laboratory, and I ask for a full thyroid panel where you're getting TSH, T4, free T3, thyroid antibodies, and also reverse T3. So usually they are around £120, worth its weight in gold if you've been diagnosed hypothyroid. Why wouldn't you want to know what is it? Where does the breakdown happen? Yesterday I did a talk on energy for our members, and I said when you have fatigue issues, you've got to look at kind of, if your car breaks down, you're like, well, what went wrong? You don't just kind of keep trying to drive it even though it's broken down. With our bodies, we just keep pushing it forward. We don't stop and go, okay, which bit of the process broke down and what can I do to tackle it? And the answer is so much in, kind of nutrition and lifestyle and exercise and sleep. It always is. And medications have that role of kind of bridging gaps. And sometimes they're definitely needed ongoing, and obviously in acute situations they're amazing at blocking symptoms and making you feel better. But ultimately, what was the cause of the problem is what you need to ask.
Catherine, what nutritional advice do you give for those with PCOS? Sorry if you've been through this already.
So we have been through it already, but again, and what I kind of said is there are different types. So you have to look at your health history, go back into the beginning of the live, and I kind of talk through it all there. But some key things I get people to look at is things like excessive exercise, low calorie diets, or maybe too much alcohol, too much sugar is the other kind of driver. So blood sugar levels are all over the place, sleep deprivation, high stress lifestyles. I used to joke, I had PCOS, so I can make this joke, that sometimes I behave more like a man than a woman, so is it any surprise that I had high androgens? But, I just liked that kind of high stress lifestyle, and that's what I was doing to my body, driving it kind of down the wrong road. It wasn't necessarily that because I behaved like a man I got high androgens, that's just a joke of mine, but it was things like not eating enough calories, not eating the right macronutrients, running too much, and I never looked at nutrients in my diet. I didn't look at things like, vitamin A, selenium. I didn't really.
How many nutrients in
a curly whirly? I did used to eat a curly whirly a day as well. So I didn't look at those kind of things. I was all about calories and the wrong stuff really, and I was all about diet foods which are very high in refined carbs, so cereals and soy milk and stuff like that. So that's possibly, but also as a teenager I had acne and some other kind of signs of high androgens, hair loss. So is it possible that I just had that predisposition as a teenager, but they stuck me on the pill, so who knows? So go back and have a look. There's loads of things that we mentioned. Getting your blood test done is a good starting point. Snapshot of your hormones. Getting your thyroid checked is also really important for PCOS. So there's a few things.
Okay, Helen, why is it harder to lose weight during perimenopause? I'm active, eat healthy, but it's very slow.
So I'm gonna. This is kind of a well-known thing, but
that'll be back to front.
This will be back to front. But basically, so perimenopause, we've got this kind of nice thing that's supposed to happen, this sequence of hormones, and in perimenopause, it just kind of goes all like that, basically. So that's why. Because perimenopause, if you remember, we've got like this personal trainer follicle-stimulating hormone in the brain telling the ovaries. Telling the follicles, trying to make them grow and trying to make them mature, but basically because the ovaries have shut down, the brain is kind of releasing more and more follicle stimulating hormone, and also luteinizing hormone that gets released. It's high levels of that. So if you go to get your hormones tested around this time, what you tend to see is lower levels of obviously estrogen and progesterone, because we haven't got the follicles anymore, and we haven't got the leftover bit of the follicle producing progesterone. And the brain is kind of trying to compensate and releasing more LH and FSH, going, why aren't I ovulating? What's happening? So it can be very confusing, and sometimes the period before, you can just imagine, that's kind of the end point, menopause, but the period before is just this kind of like, there's not as many eggs, so there aren't as much feedback to the brain, so the brain is kind of releasing different hormones at different times, so it just all gets confused. One thing that I would say is kind of the lifestyle stuff becomes really important at this time because of the kind of, I've just mentioned several things that disrupt the cycle. Now imagine if the cycle is already disrupted. So again, taking things like a really good quality female multivitamin, you can get some that are directed towards perimenopause, and they've got some herbs in there like black harsh, ashwagandha, holy basil, which are designed to kind of help with everything from kind of anxiety, emotional stress to hot flushes. So maybe look at a perimenopause specific multivitamin for women. That can be one step. Really tidy up your nutrition. Try not to rely on things like caffeine, which are going to affect your energy levels anyway. Alcohol, same thing. It can make things like hot flushes and sleep, insomnia and waking through the night a lot worse, and just adds that burden to the liver, which is already trying to cope with this situation as it is. So really kind of focus on the lifestyle stuff, tidy up your nutrition, and then kind of look at what the symptoms are, and maybe again you want something more targeted towards them. So again, essential fatty acids, so primrose oil, omega-3s, but you might need to work with someone and kind of do a bit more herbal and gut stuff to really balance out the body. But you're doing some good stuff already, so you've already mentioned the kind of obvious, but maybe the problem with health today is we think that, I know our concern is what is your perception of health, because blogs out there are telling you that various different diet foods are healthy, and in our mind they're not. So it's not just about cutting calories and cutting fat and cutting carbs. It's about going back to unprocessed, nutritious, real foods. And exercise is great and we love it, but are you exercising too much? Are you placing an extra burden on a body that doesn't have enough nutrients as it is to kind of deal with the perimenopause situation that's going on? So don't add too much stress to an already kind of stressed out body. So that's just a few things.
Nicola, who has got the 7-week-old, has come back and said, thanks guys, I did exercise up until 38 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So yes, very much part of who I am, so raring to get back to it. Thanks for the advice. So like I said, Nicola, if you send us a message on the page here, I can send you a load of 10-minute workouts that you can do at home with just your body weight, no equipment needed at all. If you do have like minimal equipment at home, i.e. like a pair of dumbbells or something like that, I can send you some for those as well that I've already got kind of done up, and I can just whiz those over to you. So yeah, do send us a message there and I'll get those over to you as soon as possible.
I'd kind of favour strength training over anything kind of cardio and hip based as well, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, I suppose like when you've got a 10-minute window though, you kind of want to crank it up a little bit.
Depending on how much sleep you've had the night before.
Yeah, depending on how you feel, but sometimes even just doing a few exercises, but in a bit of, not overly strenuous, but in a continuous kind of state is enough to kind of get the heart rate up and get you sweating without necessarily over exerting yourself if you are a bit sleep deprived and whatnot, like Kerry said. It's so weird because there's a slight delay on the phone to there, so all the actions I do on the screen there, I look down and then I'm doing them on my phone. It's like a little bit, it's about 10 seconds late, I think. Yeah.
Are we done? Is that what
No, we have Seda. Please forgive me if I've pronounced your name on there, Seda. Please let me know because that will bug me if I've got it wrong. Hi, I have underactive thyroid, irritable bowel syndrome, vitamin D deficiency, insulin resistance. I cut all carbs and focused on protein and veg. However, my weight is still the same for weeks. What else can I do?
So the thing with insulin resistance is it's not just about carbohydrates. A cell can make itself insulin resistant because maybe it's damaged inside, and with all those deficiencies that you've mentioned, so irritable bowel syndrome will lead to multiple nutrient deficiencies, which means a cell doesn't have the right ingredients to fuel itself. So components of the cell get damaged, so it kind of shuts down its ability to listen to insulin. It's not interested, it can't do anything. That's kind of one of the components, as well as the usual kind of suspects with insulin resistance. So also things like the vitamin D deficiency will affect that. And the thyroid function might have also come from that. So it's not just about carbs in this case. Your biggest goal right now is actually to kind of build up your nutrient status, which you need to do by fixing your gut. So you're going to maybe need some gut support, maybe some antimicrobials, to clear out, to weed it out, but actually maybe things like digestive enzymes, maybe some ox bile to help you emulsify your fat. So get the nutrients in. In the meantime, I only do this if you work with a practitioner. You can do things like sublingual vitamins and minerals, so things like the vitamin D spray, but obviously sunlight would be amazing if the sun would actually come out this August. That would be nice. So do what you can to kind of build up that nutrient status first. So you fix that gut, get nutrient dense with your diet, get eating things like organ meats. A little bit of weight training would be helpful in terms of the muscles are then going to kind of switch on their ability to take in glucose. Obviously you've eliminated it for now. And I think you're probably going to need something like a multivitamin as well, just to kind of bring your body, back to a state of balance. You're kind of down here and you want to bring it back up to here. And then obviously going forward, you use food and focus on kind of making sure your gut can absorb, break down everything, get it to the cells. So you're quite a complicated case. If you can, I would work with somebody on a one-to-one level and do this through a structured program. If you don't have that ability, then I would just, at least if you go to the Fit Food website, we have information on gut function. There's a good gut guide on there, you can follow that. Get on our recipes, we've got some great recipes. Get eating things like the liver, the oily fish, increase it. And there's also some supplements for fat loss blogs on there where we talk about things like fish oils, vitamin D, a good multivitamin as well. So I would really start to focus on bringing up your nutrient status. I hope that helps, and let us know how you get on, because that's quite a number of things to address.
Alison has said, how do you test to find out if you are in perimenopause? Thanks.
So it would be, again, it would be difficult. I think symptoms is probably one of your easiest things to go off, but when you go to the doctor, you might start to see things like FSH and LH and estrogen progesterone out of range. But again, they're only going to give you 1 day, so it's not really going to necessarily tell you too much. It could be that kind of in the late stage of your 28-day cycle, it all goes a bit peak-tong. So I'd probably say kind of going off symptoms alone, but do kind of visit your GP maybe every kind of 6 months and get your LH, FSH tested. Generally, the definition is not to have had a cycle for a year before they'll kind of confirm menopause. But in the meantime as well, everything else still applies. So in a way, it doesn't really change the recommendations, because it's going to be the same whether you're perimenopause, almost at menopause, or maybe not. Maybe this is just a kind of hormone imbalance. The recommendations are very, very similar in terms of gut function, lifestyle, nutrition, sleep, blood sugar. It's all very similar. So just work on those things and maybe kind of don't sweat the actual kind of, what is it? What stage am I at this point in time? Somebody did ask, about not having a cycle for a year. There used to be a big fear that there would be a growth of the uterine lining because there's maybe a progesterone deficiency and an estrogen excess. Again, it's not something that you necessarily have to worry about, but you do want to have a cycle, of course. That's a normal aspect of the female kind of fertility and reproductive cycle, is that you do shed the lining of the womb. But just don't be scared necessarily. Sometimes I think the fear of God is put in women, and actually when you have ultrasounds done, it's not even thickened and you're fine. So do work on that as a goal, but just don't let that kind of scare you.
Susie has said, my periods are very irregular, varying every 34 days to 56 days, and waiting. I'm taking Clomid, but don't know what else I need to do.
So if you have a fertility goal here, again, I would kind of be looking at everything that we've just mentioned already. You might want to do things like go and look at get some general blood tests done, get your thyroid tested. If you're doing a fertility goal, you must know things like your iron levels. I would also get your red blood cells looked at, because they're really good indicators of B12 and folate. Just look at kind of general health status, because if you're using Clomid, I'd imagine that's because you're kind of looking for a little bit of help and support to fall pregnant. So it's good to kind of, in order to be able to sustain the pregnancy, again, we want to address the causes of the hormone dysfunction ideally. So again, it might be a case of just getting some liver support in there, some phase 2 liver nutrients, maybe some targeted supplements, again, B vitamins. Ideally, again, you do this under somebody because you've got that fertility goal. So anybody that's looking to fall pregnant, I tend to recommend doing a kind of 3-month prep phase where you look at, again, kind of cells have a 120-day kind of life cycle, so try and make sure that you're getting your body in a really good state, nutrient dense, the cell's nutrient status is really good, ready for the pregnancy in order to be able to sustain the pregnancy as well. So that's all the B vitamins. Every GP talks about folate, but there are so many other things that you need to be able to fall pregnant and sustain that pregnancy. You need all of the nutrients essentially, and obviously the hormones to be balanced. And you need to have things like your lifestyle and stress levels all kind of fitting in ready, so that doesn't pose a risk during the pregnancy. So maybe kind of give yourself that 3-month stretch to let things even out. Sometimes with Clomid they actually tell you not to try anyway because of possible multiple pregnancies or kind of multiple, what do you call it, twins and having several babies in one go. So because you release more of the eggs. So that could be, I would kind of give yourself 3 months and maybe look at doing some, you can do prenatal supplements, buy some really good quality brands as well. Don't just go for any old brand. I tend to recommend brands. Thorne Research is one of the best for prenatal. So take that in the kind of 3 months or the months building up to you falling pregnant, and see if that helps along with the other stuff that we've talked about.
And I think we're done.
We're done. Awesome. Well, ladies, thank you for joining us, giving up your evening, and hopefully you found this helpful. Share it with anyone who you know has thyroid issues, PCOS, fertility issues, and again, there's been loads of stuff we've covered, including the nutrient content of a curly whirly, which will be the highlight for some people. But yeah, do get in touch with us. We have I've mentioned some blogs which I'll post in the comments box. We have various different resources, so again, if you want some more help or support from us, just type "I'm ready" in the comments box below, and we can kind of get a dialogue going, look where you need some help, and just send you loads of stuff that we have to get you going with your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to kind of like a bit of a closing thought from me.
How are your ovaries?
They're good. They're good. Falling off though. They're on that plate there. I was just going to say, as Keris mentioned, like you women are quite
complicated,
complex creatures.
Right.
But don't get overwhelmed by kind of all this talk of hormones and, at the beginning what Keris was talking about, it can get a little bit overwhelming and maybe a bit confusing, etc. But, all I would say is just kind of have faith, because there is help out there, and there is something you can do. It just requires a little bit of patience, a little bit of focus, instead of getting distracted by all the different information that's going on. But just like I say, have faith, keep your chin up. There's plenty that you can do from a nutrition standpoint and from general kind of like lifestyle changes, etc. And we are here to help you. So get in touch with any questions like Keris mentioned. You can comment below, because we'll come back to this feed, won't we?
Yeah.
Or just send us a private message, and we can come back to you on there, or maybe do more videos if there's a common question that keeps coming up. So
we love talking about hormones.
Yeah, oh yeah. Awesome, guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, get some downtime now, and prepare for an epic night's sleep, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.